Right, there we go. So what Powerpivot is it's a tool that is used in conjunction with two other products, Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Sharepoint. And what it does is, in conjunction with SQL Server 2008 R2, gives us the capabilities of taking data that we have in our environment, whether it's in a SQL database or whether it's in a Excel spreadsheet or what have you, and allow us to have ordinary end users be able to come up with business intelligence solutions to data that we have in our existing environments. So it basically gives us the self-service capability of BI solutions. In previous versions, we would have to have somebody from the IT department would have to go in and build these solutions for the users and program them into the system. But in actual fact now, what we can do is have the software there available for the end user, and the end user can then go in and build these solutions themselves. It's very important to realize, however, that you can only do this from Excel 2010. Okay, so if you don't have Excel 2010 running on your environment, you can't do this. A couple of other important features as well. You must make sure that you're running SharePoint Enterprise Edition version 2010, and you also must be running Microsoft SQL Server 2008 R2 version of SQL Server. With those three versions of the software, you'll be able to implement and install the software. So basically what Powerpivot is doing is it's taking the Excel spreadsheet capabilities and extending them to normal end users. So if a normal spreadsheet would have information in it that would contain, sales figures and things of those nature, what we would want to do is take those and be able to figure out exactly, where's my business going, how's it been going, what type of information do I have that to help me kind of create trends and so forth. And so what Powerpivot does is that it extends the capabilities of Excel with all of the standard BI concepts. Okay, so even though Excel has always had the capability of doing data manipulation, so let's say by functions or creating charts or those sorts of things, it's never been a real true BI tool. With the Powerpivot add-ins and with SQL Server, now we can take it to deliver all sorts of BI experiences, and mostly these are for people who are going to be the decision makers. So you're going to have executives and business decision makers, business managers being able to use these features and be much more informed and also be able to present information in a much simpler format. So let's just do a quick demonstration here of how to actually set up the Powerpivot capabilities. So we're going to go into my virtual machine here, and we're going to go into this lab file folder, and we're going to run the Powerpivot for Excel. Just want to make sure that before I do this that everybody can hear me. I'm hoping everybody can hear me. So I don't see if nobody can. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to work on the assumption that everybody can. So we're just going to click next here and click next and install. So this is going to take a second to install, but basically what we're doing is that we're installing the add-ins for Excel to communicate via this Powerpivot tool to SharePoint and to SQL Server. So once this is completed installation, we're then going to open Excel and verify the installation. So we'll just let this finish. Another thing that's important about this is, of course, the fact that the end users now can actually create charts and wizards and so forth, or sorry, create charts and diagrams using the wizards. And this makes it much easier for ordinary end user type of users or productivity workers, information workers, to be able to present information that's usable within the organization. All right, so we've got successfully finished installing. Now we're going to go down and run Excel. And the first thing we should see is a installation little wizard pop up that asks me to verify that Powerpivot for Excel is valid and that it should be loaded in. So we're going to wait for that to pop up. Sometimes this takes a little longer than others because of the fact that it is loading new drivers and so forth into Excel. So once it loads the first time, it generally will load much faster the second and third times going on. So we should be here in just a second. Okay, so we didn't get this message because this had been successfully installed, and you'll notice here that we now have a Powerpivot tab that exists in Microsoft Excel. So now we know that because this tab is there, we have, let's cancel that. Because it has been successfully installed, we have this tab, and we can see that everything is working correctly. So let's just minimize that. Just going to slide this down here. This as well. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go in and make sure that we have Powerpivot installed in Sharepoint. So we're going to go into here. First thing we need to do is make sure that IIS, which is the tool that's used to host Sharepoint, is configured and reset properly. So we're just going to issue a reset. Okay, so we can exit out of that. We're going to go into Explorer, back into my lab files. Oops, wrong one. And I'm going to take this DLL file, which is the Analysis Services Sharepoint integration, and I'm going to drag it to the folder called C:/Windows/Assembly. So I've copied that. We go to the Windows folder, and I've got the Assembly folder. I'm just going to paste it. Oops. Okay. One thing you'll notice is that I cannot paste because of the fact that this is a Windows protected folder, but I can drag and drop. So I'm going to go back into here, Lab Files, 901, and I'm just going to drag that into there. And if I verify, I should be able to find under M, Microsoft Analysis Services .Sharepoint. So I should be able to scroll down. And there's my Sharepoint integration file. So it's been installed. Now I'm going to go to my SQL Server ISO and click installation. So I'm going to go to Computer, SQL Server, and Setup. What we're going to do now in the SQL Server is that we're going to, under the Installation tab, is to select a new feature that we need to add. So we're going to click New Installation or Add Features to an existing installation. As it runs through its support checkup. And we're going to click OK. All right, so the next thing we need to do is install the support files. There's some support files that SQL Server requires. As you can see, one of them is a workflow scenario, and another one is a set of pre-installation files for SQL Server. So once that has been added in, we can click Install. The next is going in and setting up some rules for the installation. And you'll see that everything has passed with the exception of .NET. We're not going to worry about that. That's an error that is not any concern to us. And now we're going to select on the installation type a new installation or a shared feature. Because we already have SQL Server installed on this computer, we don't have to worry about reinstalling it. We're just going to add a new feature. So we're just going to click Next. We enter the product key, click Next. Accept the license terms, which of course, if you don't do, we won't get very far. And now you'll notice that we have three options under our setup. We can either do a SQL Server installation, which we already have. We can do a SQL Server Powerpivot for Sharepoint, or we can add other features. We're going to select Powerpivot for Sharepoint. And in here, we're going to specify an existing farm. So we're going to click Next. Under feature selection, we can just click Next because, again, we already have the proper features for the analysis services selected. Then we're going to click Next. And you'll notice here under instance configuration, we've got a new instance called Powerpivot. We're just going to click Next. And click Next again. In the account name, we're going to specify Contoso/administrator and our password. And then click Next. We're going to add the current user, and we're also going to add two other users. Both of them are for Sharepoint, so Contoso/SP star. So we're going to check, we're going to check the names. Let's do it this way. Admin, add, and we're also going to add SP_farm. These are the two service accounts for Sharepoint. And once we enter those, we're going to say Next, and then Next again, and now we're going to say Next again. So now it's going to go through, verify based on a summary. Okay, these are all of the components I want to add. As we can see, we have all of our components installed. We can click Install, and it'll go through and do the installation. This is going to take a few minutes to run. And while it does, let's just talk about a couple of other features related to Powerpivot. One of the things that Powerpivot does in the self-service point of view is not only does it allow us to create these new charts and features and diagrams and so forth, but it allows us to self-publish them as part of Sharepoint. The whole point of the self-service part is that because of the Sharepoint capabilities, the average end user can now make these published applications so that anybody can go and view them at any given time. As long as they have access to the Sharepoint environment, they'll be able to go in and view the charts and view the diagrams that the users have completed. And this combination of tools is a really good way for you to solve problems that you couldn't solve before, or a very simple way, in a very simple manner. Okay, so when you combine all three of the technologies, Powerpivot, Excel, and Sharepoint, you basically get the best of all three worlds. First of all, you get the security and management capabilities that Sharepoint provides. So you have much simpler methodologies for dealing with user accounts, for dealing with user access. You have the Excel capabilities of a simple and easy to use interface. I mean, everybody pretty much has seen Excel at some point in time and has used Excel. And therefore, because it has a very common user interface, it makes it much easier for the users to work with. And lastly, Powerpivot is the analytics component of all of this. So when you tie the three of them together, you get the security and ease of use of Sharepoint, you get the easy interface and use of Excel, and you get the data analytics engine capabilities of Powerpivot to basically build these self-service implementations for the users. Now, a couple of other things that are very important in terms of how Powerpivot deals with the Sharepoint side of things, in terms of the data data integration is that the Powerpivot gallery, which is generated, is all of the preview values of all of the Powerpivot capabilities. So things like charts and diagrams and flowcharts and pivot tables and all that sort of stuff. You can specify that users have view-only permissions, so that once you've created this this installation of Powerpivot, you can have specific users go in and build BI implementations and then set them to read only so that nobody can go and change them after the fact. You can do unattended data refreshes, which basically means that every time Powerpivot connects to the data source, it automatically refreshes itself. So it's constantly being updated with current and new information that has changed at the data source. And because of the way the wizards work, it gives you very highly informative charts and presentations, especially using the report server from Microsoft SQL Server to generate not only reports that are in standard report format, tables and charts, tables and columns. You now have the capability of creating multiple different types of charts from those installations as well. So we're just going to let this finish here for a second. Now, one of the other things that's important about this is data storage, and which always seems to be a feature that most people forget to include when they're talking about building their BI solutions or any other solution for that matter. Some important things about Powerpivot in terms of the data that it's storing. First of all, workbooks get to be very large in Excel. And so when we store the data in Excel, we do have to make sure that we have enough storage location, not only for where Excel is running, but also on the server end and in SQL Server to be able to hold all of those data files. SharePoint officially can only hold files that are 2 gigabytes in size. Okay, so when you're building these BI solutions and you've got charts and diagrams and so forth, and then you have to keep in mind that any time that the files get bigger than 2 gigabytes, SharePoint can no longer support them. So you need to make sure that if you're going to be building this, that it stays below that level, and if you're going to be coming close to that level, which you'll be able to see based on the size of the data files in Excel, that you can split them into multiple data files so that you don't have to run into that problem. The other thing is that one of the nice things that SharePoint provides you, which is something that you can take advantage of with Powerpivot, is the capability of versioning. So as you start serving documents in the document library from Powerpivot, you can create different versions of each one of those documents, and it makes it much easier to be able to work with. All right, so it looks like we were successfully installed. So we can close that. All right. Now, we want to go in and verify and make sure that the SQL Server Analysis Services is running properly. So we're going to go into Services under Server Manager. And we're going to go into Services. We'll just expand this and scroll down, and we're looking for SQL Server Analysis Services. So that service has started and Powerpivot has started. So both of those have started, which is good because that means they can now successfully work with those tools. And we also see that the where are we here? The reporting services is working as well as the integration services are working. So it seems like everything is installed and functioning correctly. So let's go into SharePoint and test it to make sure that we can create a trusted location to store our data files. So we're going to open up Central Administration. So this will take a second. Another thing that, while we're waiting for this to come up, that I'm going to mention as well, is where the actual work is done when using Powerpivot. Powerpivot has the capability of either working on the server or the client. Now, because everything is 64-bit based in the Sharepoint world, it makes it easier to share pieces of information as well as memory and data on the server side, and not force you to have to do all of your client work on your desktop. And so we can just kind of spread the load around when doing a lot of these higher-end calculations. So Powerpivot workbooks are created in a 64-bit environment. Therefore, they work really well in places that have high amounts of memory, so either your desktop or a large server. Okay. The clients don't act as servers themselves, which means that when a user tries to open up a workbook that has all sorts of data in it, there may be lack of memory on the desktop, there might be a lack of processor capability on the desktop, and because of that, they won't be able to successfully open up their workbook and deploy it and work with it correctly. If clients are using these large numbers of, or large size workbooks, and they take up a lot of memory, and they're running 32-bit clients on their desktop, they may not be able to open them because there isn't sufficient memory to be able to actually calculate and work with the file that they're dealing with. So you need to make sure that whatever you're working on, you're working with a system that is at least 64-bit on the client side or 64-bit on the server side. Because some of these workbooks can have well over 1 million rows, and of course there's a lot of information that we're going to be needing to put in there, and so if there's lots of rows, then we have lots of information. So in SharePoint Central Admin, we're going to click Application Management, and from here we're going to go to Manage Service Application. So we're going to go down to here and Manage Service Applications. And we'll wait for it to open. Now, this is something that the end users themselves obviously won't be doing. This will be something that your SharePoint and SQL Server administrators will be doing, but this is a one-time only deal. So once we actually go through this process the first time, all of the information will be recorded, and going forward, they'll be able to keep track of that going forward. So just wait for that to pop open. I would also like to point out that for the purposes of this demonstration that this is a virtual machine where we're running all of the services off one box. In a real production world and real production environment, it'll be sufficiently fast that you'll be able to not have to sit and watch the little blue line go across the screen. So we'll just wait for that to come back here. Okay. Now we're going to click on the Excel Services application. And we're going to set trusted file locations. So here we're going to click Add. And in the address, we're going to go HTTP. And in this case, it's SP2010-WFE19999. So that's the directory location based on the web address that we're going to store all of our files. So this is an HTTP address. And we're also going to select that we're going to trust its children. We're going to specify a maximum workbook size. Maximum workbook size we're going to set to be 2,000, so 2 gigabytes. And our minimum size we're going to set it to be 100 megabytes. And then we're going to click OK. And as we see, we've got this. We've got file locations, external data, keep track of warning and updates and so on, and that's correct. We're going to go back to Application Management. We're going to go back to Managing Service Applications. and we're going to click New, and we want to create a SQL Server Powerpivot service application. So we're going to call this Powerpivot Pool. Okay, so that's the name. For the managed service account, we're going to select an account that has access. In this case, we're going to pick the administrator's account. So in here, we're going to pick Contoso Administrator. For the Powerpivot service application, we're going to leave it as the database server and so forth, and click OK. Oop, missing pool name. Sorry. Let's recreate that just to make sure I didn't make a mess of it. SQL Server Powerpivot Pool, and click OK. Once this is completed, we're going to go in and refresh the list of services and verify that our new SQL Powerpivot application has been created, and verify that it's actually started and functioning. So again, while this is working in a production environment, in a normal production environment, this will be much faster because we'll be running this on much more powerful machines than we are for the demonstration purposes here. But this is, again, a one-time only process, and once it's been completed, we won't have to go through this again, unless, of course, you change your SharePoint environment, at which point you'll have to go through and redo your entire installation and reconfiguration of all of your services, so it won't be just the Powerpivot service. An important note about making sure that this service works, Excel services service applications have to be created within SharePoint and configured in order for all of this page SharePoint information to work correctly. Another thing that we have to ensure is that the Excel services service is running, and it must also have a secure store service application running with the unattended account. And this is our trusted location. Okay, so as we see here, we've got our Powerpivot service created, so we're going to click OK. And if we scroll down now, we should be able to see our, let's just refresh this. And we should find Powerpivot application. There it is. So there's our Powerpivot service application. It is created successfully and has been started. Okay. All right. So now, here we have, again, we still have our Powerpivot. We can launch our Powerpivot window. And now we have our connections. So we can generate data from an external data source. We find here that we can create, I'm going to go and get my list of servers. There's my server. And we're going to pick a database. Let's pick Northwind. Let's verify our connection works. Next. We're going to select some table information. Let's pick employees and customers and say finish. It's importing the information. It's been completed. And now we've got a very rudimentary pivot table that we can work with. So as you can see, we can drop through and pick different values here. We can generate information, so we can do Powerpivot. We can create a pivot chart. We're going to use existing worksheet. And you can see here that I'm going to be able to put in some things such as the customer ID, company name, customer name, and be able to select pieces of information from it, and then eventually be able to draw a chart. This information is all chartable. If we were using values that or fields that had numeric values in it, then of course it would create new charts for me, and then I'd be able to publish them and change them. You'll also notice up here that besides the Powerpivot tab, we have several tools. We have some design tools that are available. We have a layout tool that's available. We can format the structure of the information. And then lastly, we can analyze the information within the Powerpivot environment. So that's just a brief demonstration of how Powerpivot runs and the structure that we're going to use to basically build Powerpivot walls on our systems. Powerpivot galleries and allow users to go in and build their own presentations and their own charts and diagrams. So thank you for attending. Again, my name is Brent Dawson. If you are more interested in training on this subject or would like some further details, please contact CTC Train Canada, as they have a full range of courses that deal with BI products from both the Sharepoint, Excel, and Powerpivot points of view. Thank you very much for attending, and have a great day.